The U.S. Department of Energy is cleaning up the Oak Ridge Reservation of residual hazardous and radioactive contamination left over as a result of decades of nuclear energy research. Much of that work has been influenced by the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a citizens panel that provides independent advice and recommendations on DOE's cleanup operations. You're welcome to attend the meetings and be part of this important work. For more information, call us or visit our website.
Leon. We'll get started with our several updates from our last meeting. United Cleanup Oak Ridge, UCOR, began its new contract with us on May 23rd. Excuse me. UCOR finished its previous contract focused on cleanup at ETTP, $100 million under budget. They've been a great partner and have helped advance cleanup in Oak Ridge. Leon, I'm going to ask you to go to some other speakers while I go get something to drink.
Absolutely. Mr. Petrie, I don't know if you're prepared to say something. I'm just going to offer it to you for to EPA.
No, I didn't have anything, Leon, but thank you.
Thank you, Roger. We'll go straight to EPA. Ms. Foster.
Leon, I'll ask her to unmute real quick.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't unmute myself. So I'm Samantha Urquhart Foster, the Federal Facility Agreement Project Manager for the site. And, I'm really grateful for the positive public comment meeting that DOE had, and one of EPA's top priorities is groundwater and making some headway on that. So I'm looking forward to DOE's presentation on this, as well as an upcoming meeting we've got scheduled to talk about the big picture items for groundwater.
Thank you so much. We'll go straight to Christoph. Christoph, you with us tonight?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on mute again. Had to move this meeting to a different screen to see the unmute button. I do not have any announcements. I also second the EPA's position here. The groundwater is very important and is one of the priorities for the state of Tennessee. We are hoping for very fruitful cooperation and work with DOE and their contractor on the site. One of the things I would like to mention is that often in this presentation, we hear about how much data and how many wells DOE had and how much information this presents. Not being a hydrogeologist, I'm aware the groundwater is moving. And most of the data and information from these wells is the historical data. That's why it's very important to delineate the extent of the plumes, extent of the vertical and horizontal contamination to assist us in informed decisions that will lead to the protection of human health and environment.
Thank you, Christoph. Miss Melissa, do you want to speak now or you want to wait?
I apologize. I'll start from the beginning. United Cleanup Oak Ridge began its new contract with us on May 23rd. UCOR finished its previous contract, which focused on the cleanup of ETTP, $100 million under budget. They've been a great partner and have helped advance cleanup in Oak Ridge. The new contract has a ceiling of $8.3 billion for the next 10 years. The scope of this contract will focus on Y12, ORNL, and finishing soil and groundwater remediation at ETTP. We're also excited to air our first episode of ORM's new monthly newscast on May 22nd. We hope you had a chance to watch it. Our office sent a link to all the board members. If you did not receive an email, just let Shelley or Sarah know and they can get that to you. The show focuses on raising awareness in the community about the full scope of our progress and partnerships, Episodes will air on community television, CTV for Knoxville, and Channel 12 for Oak Ridge. This will be on Sundays at 5 p.m. The next episode will be June 19th and will be spotlighting Bonnie Shoemaker. We also had a public meeting about our proposed EMDF project on May 17th. We had more than 100 people in attendance. Among those were EPA, TDEC, excuse me, stakeholder organizations, and others. We thank those who came out. The meeting was part of a 30-day public comment period for the project that continues through June 7th. We have a website with more information. If you'd like that, just reach out to Shelley and Sarah. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Leon.
Thank you, Miss Melissa. We'll go straight to the next agenda item for the presentation tonight for the ETTP groundwater. Before I turn it over to Vice Chairman Jones, we'll announce the issue group is Jones, Lohman, McCurdy, Samaras, Shields, Shoemaker, Swindler, Tapp. Miss Amy will tell us a little bit more about Mr. Scheffler's background.
Good evening, everyone. Sam is the groundwater and water quality project program manager for Oak Ridge Environmental Management Office. He has been with DOE OREM for just over 2 years. Before joining DOE OREM, Sam worked for eCorp subcontractor RSI Intech as a field tech supporting water quality in the water resources restoration program. Sam has a bachelor's degree in geology from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Leon.
Mr. Scheffler, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll turn the table over to you and just follow up with your presentation. We'll open up for presentations for the speaker only by board members first and then guests. So Mr. Scheffler, it's all yours.
All righty. Thank you very much, Leon, and thank you everyone for being in attendance this evening and letting me speak. My name is Sam Scheffler. As just mentioned, I am the current groundwater and water quality program manager here at the Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management. And tonight I'll be doing an update on the East Tennessee Technology Park groundwater remedies and where we stand with them currently. Maybe the first thing I should do is apologize to those of you that may be familiar with Dave Adler doing similar updates in the past for the East Tennessee Technology Park. I have neither Dave's historical knowledge nor his public speaking ability, but if you do stick with me through the presentation, we have a great group of experts on the East Tennessee Technology Park on the call with us that are willing and able to answer any questions that you might have over the presented information, should I not be able to field it myself. So with that being said, please move to the next slide. And the first thing I want to do for those new board members is orient everyone with the exact location within the Oak Ridge Reservation that we'll be discussing this evening. So if you look at the image to the left here, the entirety of the Oak Ridge Reservation is shown in that red outline area with the city of Oak Ridge being in the northeast of that figure there. You see where 62 and I believe it's, well, you see where the interstates intersect there in the northern, just north of that, where they intersect up there. And then you'll see landmarks throughout the reservation, such as Y12 and ORNL and their corresponding watersheds, exactly. So the area that we're focusing on this evening is the northwestern portion of the reservation, East Tennessee Technology Park. That's the former K-25 site, exactly in that purplish rectangle there. And it's enlarged in the figure to the right and reoriented about 30 degrees or so counterclockwise there. So this evening, we'll be discussing 3 sub-areas of the East Tennessee Technology Park. Sorry, my cat is jumping on the table, I apologize. So I'll highlight those sub-areas now in that figure on the right, one of which being the Zone 1 area that is highlighted in yellow. That's sort of the perimeter to the East Tennessee Technology Park. And the other two sub areas I'll discuss for separate groundwater decisions this evening are located both in this Zone 2 area, this green highlighted area, and they are conveniently separated by that body of water you see in between Poplar Creek. So to the left of Poplar Creek, you see the K31, K33 area exactly. And then to the right and across Poplar Creek, you see the main plant area. So I'll go into detail on these sub areas and exactly what's going on as far as groundwater is concerned in the following slides. But if you would keep these or this image on the right in mind, it should look familiar here on the next slide. All right, perfect. So this is that same exact orientation, same general area as that figure on the right. Once again, the K31. I'm sorry, whoever's controlling, I'm making you move the cursor around a lot, but once again, that K31, K33 area exactly. To the right, we have the main plant area. And then exactly, it's the only area on this image that looks like it was ever at one point even developed, which is a big credit to all of the work that's already been done out at the East Tennessee Technology Park. And then finally, the Zone 1 area, which is sort of that perimeter and the upper and lower left portion of this, bounded by the Clinch River there on the far left. So even further out than that cursor is there, perfect. And then to the left on this slide, you'll see a list of the names of documents as well as their associated federal facility agreement milestone dates. And I've included these sort of just to give everyone an idea of where we stand in the Superfund cleanup process for these three separate sub areas of the East Tennessee Technology Park. So for the K31, K33 area, as well as the main plant area, you will notice that we are quickly approaching a period in which we will require public engagement via the proposed plans. That's a period in which we will have selected a preferred alternative, a cleanup alternative for these sites. And it's one step closer to actually implementing a remedy for these Zone 2 areas there. We're not quite in that same position at the Zone 1. We're in the remedial investigation work plan phase, and I'll speak more on Zone 1 in the following slides. But what I'd like to do now is sort of hone in on each of these three individual sub areas and corresponding groundwater decisions for them. So I'll start with K31, K33 area on the next slide. All right, perfect. So my apologies, Christoph. It's too late for me to turn my script around here, but I will be speaking to the amounts of data that we have at these different locations. So for the K31, K33 area, we have been collecting groundwater data for over 3 decades now. And to Christoph's point, we have not continuously collected data over that 30+ year span, nor have all of the monitoring wells that you see in this figure to the right in that are highlighted yellow here. That's the well ID for them, nor have all of those wells existed over that 30-year span. But we do have a substantial amount of data, and we do believe that we are approaching a point, as Dave put it last year, of diminishing returns for that data, and looking to actually get a decision made or choose a preferred alternative for the remedy for this area. And I'll also point out the 5 red circles that you see in the figure. Of course, you see the footprints for the former K31 and K33 buildings. The 5 red circles indicate the newest piezometers that have been put in just recently at the request of the state during our remedial investigation and feasibility study phase. And that's a phase of work in which we're looking at the extent of the contamination at the site. We are evaluating risk to human health and environment. And in the feasibility study aspect, we are looking at alternatives or technologies to actually implement a remedy here. So I will go into detail of a little bit about the contamination that we do see on this next slide here at K31, K33. So once again, this is still that K31, K33 area. It's a bit of a different angle here, but I don't want to confuse anyone with where exactly I'm speaking on. I should mention that the sources to the groundwater contamination have been remediated, and a no further action decision has been approved through the Zone 2 soils record of decision. And generally, that's just to say that this works into the sequencing of all of our work basically out here, or that we do across the reservation. Once we remediate a source to groundwater, then of course we can focus on the groundwater and the contamination and the groundwater contamination. And what we do see at this site, I guess I'll speak a bit of the history of the contamination. The K31 and K33 buildings were used during the uranium enrichment process, and they had a recirculating cooling water system that sort of ran beneath both buildings, I believe. And within that recirculating cooling water system, chromium was used in a corrosion inhibitor, and nickel was used in the process piping. So we believe those to be potential contaminant sources for the contamination that we see, although we do just see it at above maximum contaminant levels in just a handful of wells, and just sort of floating right above and right below that maximum contaminant level. And that, of course, is it's the highest limit allowable of a contaminant in drinking water per Environmental Protection Agency's National Drinking Water regulations. And because that is what we're seeing at the site, it is most likely, of course, DOE's preference that the preferred alternative that we propose in the upcoming proposed plan is the monitored natural attenuation remedy, which of course is the continuation of looking at the monitoring wells, continuing to monitor, and basically just allowing nature and natural processes to remediate the contaminants to a level below the maximum contaminant level. So I think that's all I want to say on the K31, K33 site for now. So if you'll move to the next slide, please. We're going to go across Poplar Creek. I promise I'm not trying to confuse everyone. This is the entirety of the site. You'll see the K31, K33 area that was just discussed in the upper middle portion. And then we're going to move down across Poplar Creek to the main plant area. Exactly. So if you would please move to the next slide. For the main plant area, we've been investigating groundwater, for over 2 decades. We have over 350 permanent monitoring wells in place in the main plant area. And I should speak to the nature of the contamination that we're going after with the main plant area feasibility study and proposed plan. It differs from that in the K31, K33 area. We're looking here at chlorinated volatile organic compounds, CVOCs, and more specifically, trichloroethene, TCE. We've got an acronym for everything in the DOE world. And that was seen in industry as a degreaser, a cleaning agent. And I should also note that we are no longer contributing to these contaminant sources. The TCE was used at the site, I believe, between the 40s and the 50s, or excuse me, 40s and 60s. So throughout the site's history, I should also mention that the main plant area generally coincides with the historic K25 area footprint. There are degreaser pits and drainages, and over time, we have seen these CVOCs get into the ground, subgrade, and into the bedrock in some cases. And I guess I'll go into a bit of detail on what we see subgrade on the next slide. Okay, perfect. So this is the groundwater plumes or areas of contamination that are seen at the main plant area for the CVOCs. The green on these slides sort of indicates the lesser concentrated area of these plumes, and the orange obviously indicates the higher concentrated areas of contamination in these plumes. I should mention that the yellow highlighted areas are those that DOE wishes to consider in the proposed plan for the main plant area. It contains 6 priority chlorinated volatile organic compound plumes, as well as the Tech 99 plume, the technetium 99 plume you see in the middle with the hot pink, and the K1004 plume in the bottom, sort of just that green blob there. Oh, yes, exactly, thank you. We are considering those 2 plumes, or hoping to consider them in the proposed plan for a monitored natural attenuation demonstration study. All right, so how are we going to address these contaminated plumes? So if you would go to the next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. And I don't want to spend too much time on this slide. There's a lot of information on it. I included it to show you the different technologies that we're considering for the priority CVOC sources, and sort of the different combinations of technologies that have been considered throughout the focused feasibility study process. And it turns out, I believe that we have a front runner in fact, our proposed preferred alternative in the proposed plan that we've just recently submitted to EPA and TDEC, being the enhanced in situ bioremediation option. And if you would move to the next slide, I'll talk probably more than you want to know, but just because I found it so interesting, this particular remedy on this slide here. So the figure here shows the
if I can interrupt you for a second here. This is very detailed approach to this plume. Do we have a similar approach or plan approach for other plumes rather than that 14-1?
I'm sorry, Christoph, could you repeat your question?
So let me rephrase it here. I complimented you on that very detailed and very workable approach to that 1401 plume. My question is DOE has a similar approach and similar plans for other plumes on the main plant at the main plant area?
Okay, yeah, well, of course, there's been tens of millions of dollars of research done just at this K1401 plume and investigatory research. We would, I believe, assume that the approach is similar for those other 5 priority CVOC plumes for the implementation of the enhanced in situ bioremediation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. So for this figure here to the right, once again, that is the K1401 plume. And this is just an example, a likely treatment area for the enhanced in situ bioremediation. You'll note again that the orange area is that of the highest concentration contamination of volatile organic compounds in the area. The red dots in that orange area indicate injection wells for this enhanced in situ bioremediation remedy. And just to speak on that remedy, it's the process of introducing an electron donor, often in the form of a fermented carbon, via these injection wells, going subgrade, of course, and getting to the microbial community that already exists at this site, and basically bulking up that microbial community to metabolize these chlorinated volatile organic compounds in a process that they do, of course, naturally already. It is more so focused and much faster and on a bigger scale than if it were to just happen naturally, of course. So I think that's all I wanted to say here for the enhanced in situ bioremediation. So if you would move please to the next slide, I'll wrap up the third of three here for different groundwater decisions. This is the Zone 1 area. We are currently working with EPA and TDEC on the remedial investigation work plan, and this is a phase of work in which we are identifying data needs, possible data gaps from historic data. As Christoph mentioned, it's a necessity to have newer data as well. And we're also looking at or identifying the methods in which we'll collect that data and looking at the conceptual site model for this area. So I mentioned that we're not quite to that stage as we are with the K31, K33 area and the main plant area, but if you notice the schedule in the lower left, we do have the proposed plan anticipated milestone for fiscal year 2025. And I know I'm getting close to my limit here. I promise I just have one final slide after this with a few takeaway thoughts, if you wouldn't mind to move to that. Thank you very much. And I really just wanted to note here, as I've mentioned, the Department of Energy has invested millions and millions of dollars in the investigatory stages of work between K31, K33 area and the main plant area. We are finally at a point where we are on the precipice of selecting a preferred alternative for these two specific sub areas of the East Tennessee Technology Park. So it's an exciting time, and we're very much so excited to get out there and begin remediating the contamination that we do see. Once again, we continue to collaborate with EPA and TDEC, and I think I speak for the tri-party when I say that we hope the East Tennessee Technology Park looks something like you see in the drawing here in the near future. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Mr. Scheffler. So we'll open up to the board members first. Are there any questions for the presentation tonight? You will raise your hand, Mr. Tuck.
I'm sorry. Yes, let me unmute here and start the video. I've got actually two questions. In the K31 and K33 sites, you said there'd been collection there for about 3 decades in some of those wells, but some had been installed more recently. Define for me more recently.
So thank you, Tom. The 5 highlighted piezometers were actually just installed, I believe, in 2020 or 2019. And we've collected a couple rounds of data from those to have more recent areas. And I believe those generally correlate to karst sinks in the area.
Okay. And you mentioned that a handful of the wells were hovering around the drinking water quality. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And then on the 1401, the orange plume, is there an estimated time frame that this natural process will take care of that?
For the K1401 area,
Yes, sir.
so that is an area in which we would have to implement an active remedy. In this case, the enhanced in situ bioremediation. And thank you for asking that question. I should have mentioned that none of the options considered for the main plant area are in any way cheaping out, for lack of a better term. That enhanced in situ bioremediation option of technology would cost tens of millions of dollars again and be implemented over a number of years.
Okay. Do you have, if everything went exactly as what you would have hoped as far as funding goes and as far as process goes, do you have an estimated time frame of when that 1401 plume would be of the quality that you're looking for?
That's a great question as well, Tom. And I should have mentioned that what we're doing at the main plant area is an interim record of decision. It is not a final record of decision. So we're looking to get these levels down as much as possible, but more actively looking at getting out and implementing a remedy soon. So I don't know the answer to getting it down to the levels, the final levels that we hope to see. If anyone else on the call has a better answer, feel free to chime in.
Hey, Sam, this is Samantha Pack. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Sam.
Okay, so the 1401 plume is quite complex. The first interim remedy is addressing the primary source area in the unconsolidated zone, so the shallow zone. The 1401 plume has actually moved down into bedrock, and that bedrock component is really not part of this decision, so we don't have a full answer to your question. We are planning on implementing active in situ bioremediation for 5 years and then reevaluating how well it has done. So that's probably the best answer we can give you on that.
Okay, so from our lifestyle thought, that is the real answer as far as the time frame is unknown, but it's most likely pretty far out there. And by pretty far, I'm going to define that as 20 years.
You're correct. It would be, if our modeling has shown, it would be beyond 20 years. Again, once we really hit the primary source in the unconsolidated zone, that gives us a chance to reevaluate that. And all of us, all the three parties will be looking at these data over time to look at the final decision for that plume.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Harriet?
Yeah, two angles. I dug back into my paperwork and looked at the maps of ground plumes from 2019, and then again, the one that was put out in the talk. And they both show the green areas as being, the least contaminant, but the size has shrunk drastically from 2019 to the current one. And I wonder if that's this natural attenuation you're talking about, or some reevaluation of how you draw maps.
Bob, do you want to answer that, or do you? Yeah, I'll take it.
I'm looking at.
Go ahead, Bob.
I'm not exactly sure which older maps you're looking at.
I'm looking at a LIDO map from August of 2019. And it basically shows a green area that connects the 14-1, 12, 1036, the whole thing as being a long green, wide green area. And I wonder if that was just a, general, if the wells map that way and the wells now say those contaminants have been reduced. That's my question.
You would not see significant monitored natural attenuation over that short period of time. There are different styles of plume maps that are shown. In the presentation this evening, it is a sum of all VOCs. So we're adding all the individual different chemical components of VOCs. You know, in the 2019 or MPFS, the main plant feasibility study, there's a big appendix that has individual maps that split out each of those components like TCE, BCE, vinyl chloride, and the like. So it's, you may not be looking exactly at the same.
I'm looking at legends that read exactly the same way. The green plume is volatiles of 5 micro whatevers per 100. So the color coding is the same on both maps.
And
So,
this is from the
Bob,
2019.
Somebody jump in and
let
help
me
me
make
here.
a stab. Let me make a stab at that. The big green areas in the earlier maps covered wide swaths of areas that did not have any wells. They were just, there was an assumption at the time that there was a wide area of contamination. When we did the 1401 treatability study, we started to put in enough wells to realize that there were areas in that wider swath that really weren't contaminated. The assumption that the contamination just spread everywhere has kind of fallen apart based on some of that treatability study. It's one of the things, though, that will have to be looked at as part of additional characterization work over time.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. It was just a significant enough difference that it had me kind of going bling bling. The other is a bit off the wall, but you showed the treatment that you were going to do in that one area. And I'm just wondering if you have a clue of how many such plumes around the country exist that kind of treatment might be applied to in the future if it works. You know, those are industrial chemicals, and how many industrial places have, is this something that being developed could be applied in lots and lots of situations?
Thank you, Harriet. That's a great question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say that this is an extremely common type of plume nationwide, well, worldwide, in fact. Solvents have been used everywhere for 100. Yeah, and it's a very mature technology. In situ bioremediation, and there's a number of different styles, has been used extensively. So there's really nothing that is new here. This is a mature technology that's been used in thousands of sites worldwide. It works very well in many instances. The 7,000 area over at ORNL had a demonstration pilot several years ago that showed great efficacy. And we were, quite buoyed by that. And, that's the geology. While the formations are somewhat different, they're very similar texturally. So we think that based on what we see over there, we're going to have good luck and success with in situ biotreatment here at ETP.
Good. I didn't realize it was not a already used technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harriet. Ms. Bonnie?
Bonnie, I think you're muted.
I can tell. Yeah, she is.
right now, Miss Bonnie. Michael, while we're working with Bonnie there, go ahead with your question.
Sure. So kind of going back to the plume slide, the K1232 plume, it looks like the kind of the green area of the volatile organic compounds is kind of going into the, like touching up to the Poplar Creek. So are those VOCs, are they making their way into that water stream currently?
The short answer is yes. The short answer is yes. At very dilute concentrations, we're likely having VOCs enter Poplar Creek both on the north side of the Poplar Creek building complex and on the southwest side of K27. That the groundwater exits into Poplar Creek, so there is VOCs that are entering the water body.
And is there kind of monitoring in place right now to kind of keep track of those VOCs, like downstream of that?
Yes.
Okay. Just making
Well,
sure.
we have kind of sentry wells that are hard by Poplar Creek. So we have a pretty good idea of the concentration levels, and that's how it's reflected in how the plume's drawn. Poplar Creek has an enormous volume of water, which is further dwarfed by the Clinch River. So the very low levels of contaminants that are entering Poplar Creek are very rapidly diluted.
That's all for me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Miss Shelley, I think we've lost Bonnie, or she's stepped off. Has she signed back on for you? Christoph, go ahead.
I would like to ask for a clarification on adaptive management. This is the last bullet on slide number 10. I would like to hear from EPA also about the EPA's position on adaptive management, because the latest information I have is that we do not have agreement between agencies on how to approach this process.
So Christoph, this is Sam. Let me answer, and then we'll let, if Samantha Foster is on, we'll let her answer from EPA standpoint. Adaptive management is a concept, and that is that you go out and you try something, you see how well it works, you adapt to whether it's working or it's not working. You can have formal decision criteria that help you do that. If then statements, you can learn as you go and adapt to that. And we have put in this proposed plan a process for gathering data, reviewing it annually, determining if we're doing the right things or if we need to change something. So I'd like to focus a little bit more on that broad level concept than any kind of formal program. It is something that the ITRC has really spent a lot of time recommending that we use at these very complex groundwater cleanup sites. You can't just go out at one point in time and know everything. And so you get started, you get more data, you adapt, you get more data, you adapt until you get to the point you can make a final ROD. So that's something we're going to try to get a little bit better about explaining here over the next year as we lay out this proposed plan and ROD. So that's the concept we have in mind for adaptive management with this site.
I'm gonna, Carl is our project lead for this, Carl Brody. So I think I see him online. So Carl, can you speak to this issue?
Sure. Adaptive management is a tool that EPA recognizes in terms of, as Samantha Pack has laid out. It's an iterative tool that allows you to review data and make changes based on that data. The Superfund circular process itself already has that adaptability. Those options occur within Superfund and the circular process, but adaptive management gives you a better way to document it. The problem that EPA has with adaptive management right now is while we initiated several studies, the complete development of adaptive management as applied to remediation sites was never fully developed before a new administration came in. And all of that adaptive management work has been shelved, so it's not complete. So we've recommended in comments that in order to move forward and not create confusion in terms of what is and what isn't adaptive management, that DOE consider using the Superfund circular process and the, for lack of a better word, adaptability that it provides in terms of decision-making based on data review and analysis. We have not resolved between the three parties, that three parties being TDEC, EPA, and DOE, exactly how we'll move forward if DOE chooses to use adaptive management. But that's where we are.
Thank you. I don't see Bonnie sign back on unless Shelley's called her. So let's go ahead right now and open up. Do we have any guest available that has any questions for the presenter? If so, please raise your hand.
Just a note, Bonnie was having technical difficulties and did sign off, but I got with her and she'll email me if she has follow-up.
Good deal. Thank you. Any guests for any questions for tonight's presenter? Good deal. Thank you so much, Mr. Scheffler. We'll go into public comment period. Ms. Shelley, you want to comment on
that? We did not receive any requests for public comment, but we will continue to receive public comment on this meeting until the close of business on Monday. Just email or call one of the staff or go to our website, energy.gov/ORSOB, and we will take care of it.
Thank you so much. We'll call for any additions or a motion to approve the agenda for tonight. Any requests for new action items? And of course, item B, the next meeting will be no July or August regular meeting. The board would hold its annual planning meeting August the 13th. We'll touch on that here a little bit later. So thank you again to the presenter. And we're fixing to open up the board meeting, so everyone's free to leave if you wish to do so, except for the board members. Thank you again, Mr. Scheffler. So we'll go straight into
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. We'll go straight into the board business tonight with the, do we entertain a motion to approve, edit, or amend the minutes for the March 9th, 2022 meeting minutes?
Motion.
Well, motion by Ms. Lohman, second by Ms. Jones. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Ms. Shelley can take the count.
So looks like, okay, we've got everybody in favor, unanimous.
Everyone, okay, we won't call for a no vote then. Item B, vote to approve the May 11th, 2022 meeting minutes. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Likewise, unanimous vote there.
Thank you so much. Please lower your hands, and we'll go straight to a vote for the recommendation that we've come up with on the FY 2024 budget recommendation. All in favor, please raise your hand.
We can also have some discussion on that if needed.
We have a motion on the floor, but we'll call the question. Are there any comments or questions from the board members? Do we have a motion, a second on that? I got ahead of myself.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Do we have a motion to approve the 2024 budget recommendation?
Motion to approve.
We have Ms. Jones as a motion, second.
Second.
Ms. Lohman, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed?
See, this was likewise unanimous. Took just a second for everybody.
Ms. Shelley, help me out here. Did I call for a motion in a second for the May 11th? I mean, I got ahead of myself.
You got ahead of yourself.
Yeah,
You called for May, but not March.
Okay.
that's why I got confused on the recommendation. I thought we had.
You got to keep me lassoed in. So let's
Yeah,
open a motion for May the 11th meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Ms. Jones, motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Michael, for a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand again. We'll call another vote. My apologies for that.
Okay, I think we're still good.
Okay, we'll go to the next agenda item, responses, recommendations, and alternate DDFO report. Ms. Melissa.
Yes, as was mentioned earlier, we have our annual planning meeting scheduled for August 13th in Townsend, Tennessee at the Tremont Lodge. You would, Shelley sent, well, I guess the ORSOB sent out an email just prior to this meeting. So you will have information so that you can get back with them to let them know if you're planning to spend the night there, if you're just going to drive up for the day. The meeting usually is scheduled between like 9 a.m. and 2. We typically get done much earlier than that, but we want to make sure we have plenty of time if we need to have extra discussion. So please get back with Shelley and Sarah as soon as you can to let them know if you plan to attend, because we must put travel authorizations in place for everybody who's attending to make sure that you're covered. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Melissa. We'll go into committee reports. Michael, you want to brief us on EM?
Yep. So real briefly, Dennis Baton stopped by to answer some questions about the EMDF, waste disposal capacity, and the waste acceptance criteria. We discussed the now proposed budget that was passed just a minute ago. So kind of finish those recommendations and prioritizations. And we do want to let you know that kind of moving on to the second item for us, that Bonnie Shoemaker has stepped down, and that we would like to see if we could get someone to kind of fill that position.
Good deal. Thank you. So we want to open that up. That's some of the comments as well. That will be voted on. That replacement for the co-chair will be later in the month. If you've not participated or if you have an interest to come forward, please do so, because several of us, as myself, will be retiring off the board at the end of the completion of this term. And so we need new blood to step up, take a responsibility, and kind of move this board forward and continue the legacy that the people that's held these chairs before us and hold it currently to try to move it forward and just keep the good prosperous way that we've had. So if you do have interest, please tell Michael, Ms. Shelley, anyone. We can always nominate from the floor of the meeting on the EM meeting, but it's always nice to know who is interested, so that way we at least know we can we've got someone to cover those positions. Very important position. I don't have anything else on the executive. Are there any additions or agenda or closing remarks to anyone? We'll open up. I've got some hands up. Make sure you've lowered those unless you have questions. Let me check real quick. No hands up. Good deal. Is there anything further to come before the board before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Do I hear so motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Jones. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Michael. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.